For my next guest, we bring you a completely different perspective on the economy. Now, Peter Joseph is a filmmaker and founder of the Zeitgeist Movement, which is a sustainable advocacy organization. Now, the movement believes that social issues such as poverty, corruption, pollution, and war are all a result of an outdated and inefficient social structure. They advocate for a new socioeconomic model, a natural law, resource-based economy. I sat down with Peter earlier this week to talk about his ideas, and I started off by asking him to explain what he thinks is wrong with our current banking system. Take a look.
Starting with the banking system and the financial sector, which I would say is a carcinogenic adaptation of the underlying premise of capitalism. The system itself isn't designed to cater to what we would term technical sustainability or social stability. In other words, you have something called market efficiency, which, as we all know, has to do with the movement of money, the acquisition of efficiency for profit attainment, the need to have economic growth to keep people employed. All of these attributes require servicing and in truth, require technical inefficiency. So the more we improve society, the more we have technology that can be used for extended periods, the more we adapt our technology, the more we're able to create sustainable products, the more we're able to solve problems, in other words, the less fuel there is to drive market efficiency and keep the economy going. The market economy was basically created in this sort of 16th century handicraft premise. Adam Smith, for example, never would have fathomed that we would have the largest industry in the world today being the financial sector, and people trading and gambling and having the gambling casino economy that we have today with equities and futures and currencies. This is a carcinogenic adaptation of the underlying premise of seeking the widget gain, as it were, from Economics 101. So it's completely outdated, in other words, and it's not going to handle the problems we have today with a billion people starving, 3 billion in poverty, the huge water stress that is rising, the energy crisis and demand. We will have another billion people on this planet in another 15 years. These stressors will not be resolved by a system that actually wants inefficiency to keep it going.
Right. Now, can you explain to our viewers what the Zeitgeist Movement is?
The Zeitgeist Movement is a global sustainability advocacy organization. And in short, we get to the root of what is underlying most of the social problems that we see in the world today, from the conflict and social instability that we see on a daily basis to, again, the core ecological crises that we also see amalgamating and continuing. And what we find is that the root premise of the social model is at fault. Now, I want to make one distinction, because when you talk about or criticize capitalism, people are very quick to point fingers. Capitalism did not start in the 16th century, even though it was formalized as such. The premise of capitalism, the premise of the market itself, is this fear of scarcity and the necessity to compete and gain advantage over others because of that fear. And this has amalgamated into this complex system that we have today that is literally decoupled from itself, where people are out trading and gaining without any regard for what actually is relevant to social progress. So the movement sees this, and we also see that we have immense problem-solving capacities and technological solutions out there that are going unused because they are simply too efficient to be applicable to keep market circulation going. So we recommend what I term a natural law resource-based economy. And this idea simply says that we need to use the scientific method. We need to get down to the root of what actually creates life support, creates public health, ensures security of the environment, ensures social and ecological sustainability. And to do so, we need to install a completely different social system that actually has that interest in mind. And that is an elaborate conversation that we can go into at length, but I'm going to stop right there.
And I do want to go into it at length at some point, but thank you for soundbiting it for us. But my question is, what happens when economic growth slows today as compared to what would happen when economic growth slows in this more sustainable society that you envision, Zeitgeist Movement?
Oh. Well, that's a very interesting idea, because you're premising economic growth within the market context. There would be no economic growth in the same theoretical understanding in a resource-based economy. Economic growth is basically defined about the acceleration of money moving through consumers and producers and consumer producers and laborers, and it's money that circulates, and this is what keeps growth going and keeps people employed. And of course, employment is the ultimate foundation of an economy. If people are employed, then they don't get purchasing power, they can't can't buy into the system, and they can't keep this highly contrived cycle going. In a new model, in a socially sustainable model based on the scientific method, we don't have economic growth. You have actual tangible production to meet human needs, and you use the the highly optimized sustainability and efficiency protocols, you could call them, that we have derived from nature that says, okay, you shouldn't overuse this resource because it's scarce. We should use high propensity resources that have good abundance rather than deplete, say rare earth metals for arbitrary purposes, such as cheap cell phones that you can buy for 99 cents that end up in a landfill and never recycle because they're not designed to. So economic growth is a contrivance of thought coming from the monetary economy, and I can't even think of a way it would exist in a new system, other than the concept of simply producing to meet human needs in an access type of society rather than a proper needs society, which is another point that we can touch upon as well. So I hope that makes sense. It's a market contrivance, economic growth.
It does, but my follow-up to that is, how would a non-monetary society be more sustainable?
Because it would be based on actual technical premises of sustainability, things that we don't do in the monetary system because market needs turnover, market needs inefficiency. Again, if you want to have a very robust market economy, you need immense amounts of things to service. I'll give you an example, cancer. If we resolved cancer, if we were able to actually go after the lifestyle factors, the genetic propensities, and stop this massive growth of cancer, which is continuing on the planet, there would be billions, if not trillions of dollars and millions of jobs lost tomorrow if this actual resolution was put forward. So if you can extrapolate axiomatically that example to what it would mean to make a car that lasts 100 years. Well, imagine, for example, if we had a housing structure, we had advanced housing structures that had advanced production of produce in our own homes. And we also had 3D printing machines that were based on nanotechnology that could produce the basic housewares. Basically, capital goods becoming consumer goods, in other words. What would that mean if each of us could go, say, a month without buying anything? The entire economy would collapse. So the system is not predicated on saving, conservation, or anything that you can, in a classical sense, would deem sustainable. And I'll add one more thing to that, because I think it's adjacent to it, and that's the idea of social sustainability. This system produces conflict. Its core driving mechanism is imbalance. I mean, it's hard to use the word exploitation because everyone thinks you're a Marxist, but it's very, very true. If you're going to do cost efficiency, which is the core driver of saving money in this type of economy, meaning that if I start a business, I need necessarily to maintain competition to pay my laborers the least amount I possibly can so I can stay afloat and be competitive, outsourcing to third world labor, what have you. This is inherently destabilizing because you're creating immense wealth gaps. And again, it's this carcinogenic incentive system that's where we are today with one of the largest wealth gaps in human history. And it's only going to get worse, I'm sorry to say, especially when the stressors of the environmental crises really hit. The wealthy are going to continue to compound their greed, which greed is based on fear, continue to secure their positions, and you're going to continue to see larger and larger wealth divides until, of course, as history has proven, you end up with probably a revolution of sorts, which we are seeing periodically around the world right now for similar economic reasons.